The claim that I'm responding to is that America has become an unruly empire, and the opponent's secondary claims are military expenditures are out of control, and the secondary claim is America has damaged its global image, and third, the United States neglects its own citizens and welfare. And for my response to the first secondary claim, he talked about how we're spending a lot of money on war, and I believe he said that we're spending about $711 billion in 2008. And he talks about how we're spending, we average like 2 to 3 times more than other countries like China. And of course we're going to be spending more money right now because we're in war and China's not. But and the U.S. Department of Defense stated that the Army spent $1.4 billion on family support in 2008, and so he's portraying it that $711 billion went towards like the actual war itself, but we're actually taking care of the people in the United States, and so that doesn't really show that it's an unruly empire. And my response to the secondary claim is the data on Guantanamo Bay is not current. He talks about how the Guantanamo Bay scandal is against the United Nations because it's torture. But on January 22nd, 2009, Obama signed orders to close Guantanamo Bay, and he stated that the message we are sending around the world is that the United States intends to prosecute the ongoing struggle against violence and terrorism. And we are going to do so vigilantly, we are going to do so effectively, and we are going to do so in a manner that is consistent with our values and our ideals. And this was in the Boston Globe. So Obama is stating that he's trying to think of what the people in the United States want, and he is trying to fix things with the United Nations since we started this war and used torture going against what we had agreed to with the United Nations. And my response to the third secondary claim is that Matthew failed to show current steps taken towards citizens and welfare. The Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, signed American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, and it says the department will fund $500 million in new school and housing construction, road and bridge improvements, and workforce development projects for federally recognized tribes across the nation, and the department's Indian Affairs Office will also offer federally granted loans for American Indian-owned businesses. And overall, the Interior will invest more than $3 billion through President Obama's economic recovery plan. And so this shows that although he stated that we got a grade D as far as infrastructure, where we have already signed something making progress towards fixing that issue. So overall, I think that his information wasn't current because most of it was based in 2008. And so while America might have been an unruly empire, we are no longer becoming an unruly empire because we're fixing the problems. Thank you.
Okay, the structure is labeled pretty clearly. The signpost on the first point, you kind of repeat the claim or summarize the claim. That's okay. The argument about the war status in comparing the U.S. versus China, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I'm not sure that it would make a substantial difference. And even if it did, the advocate's argument here, I think, is primarily about what the military is doing in this particular situation, so I'm not sure it addresses your point. The notion that the money is actually going to support troops, I think that that does suggest that there is some, internal benefit from the spending on the military, although I'm not sure that it really is responsive to the advocate's claim on what our adventurism consists of. On the second point, basically you accept the premise that the advocate suggested and just say, well, not anymore, because Obama has made a change in what the policy is there. And there might be questions about whether or not the change that Obama has made is significant enough, or whether it meets the standards that we think the rest of the world wants to see in us in avoiding empire building or being unruly or something, whatever the criteria were that the advocate presented. It's an okay response. I'm not sure it's a particularly convincing response, but I think it does point out that there is a vast difference from one administration to another, and that if we look at it from a political perspective, it's not an institutional issue, it's a political issue that we're faced with, and it's not inherently an unruly empire. It might in fact be something that is just moved by political exigencies to act one way or another. I thought you had good transition on the third point, and I think this is actually the place where your argument is quite a bit stronger. You show substantial spending on a variety of infrastructure sorts of issues. There's not really an explanation about why the D rating is effective or ineffective, but you put it in context. We're spending huge chunks of money, and it sounded like it was pretty specific on Indian and reservation lands. I suspect that there's probably a substantial amount of spending on other things as well. So, I think you've got some good data on that. The only question is whether or not we've neglected these things because of our empire building or simply because we're cheap. I think there might be a good cause-effect argument to be made there. The advocate's arguing that it's, causality, we're making a trade-off here, and I think you could argue, for instance, that there's a different trade-off, that you've kind of ignored those issues and just gone for the one point of view. Okay, thank you.